Greetings to everyone. Welcome back to my educational channel on biology, where you will acquire useful knowledge and gain more understanding of biological concepts to boost your biology grades. I'm Teacher Janet, and today we'll be discussing subtopic 9.6 in the Form 4 Biology KSSM syllabus. The title is A Balanced Diet, Part 1. So there'll be another video on the balanced diet. We will also discuss an important experiment to determine the energy values of different food samples, such as groundnuts and cashew nuts. This experiment is very important for Paper 3 practical exam this year, as it has not been asked before. And so let us find out more about how to carry out this experiment and how to calculate the energy value of food. The learning standards for today's lesson are as follows. 9.6 Balanced Diet. First learning standard is, after this lesson, we should be able to conduct an experiment to study the energy values in food samples. So this will be discussed in this video. Now, 9.6.2, we should be able to conduct an experiment to determine the contents of vitamin C in fruit and vegetable juices. This will be in part 2, the next video. And 9.6.3, we should be able to justify the modification of diets for individuals who experience obesity and experience a specific disease such as diabetes mellitus, cardiovascular disease, or cancer. So this will also be discussed in the next video, which is part 2 of this subtopic 9.6 Balanced Diet. So before we go on to the subtopic, let us have a look at this overview or concept map of Chapter 9, Nutrition and the Human Digestive System. Now, in the previous videos, we have already discussed the structure of the digestive system and also the processes of digestion, absorption, assimilation, and defecation. Now, in this video, we are going to discuss a balanced diet, the definition of a balanced diet, and then also how to calculate the energy value of different food substances like groundnuts and also cashew nuts, even biscuit and so forth. And then we also discuss another experiment in the second video, part 2 of this subtopic. We'll discuss how to determine the concentration of vitamin C in fruit and vegetable juices. And we'll also discuss diet modifications for specific individuals, such as those who suffer from obesity or suffer from certain diseases. So this is also important for essay questions in SPM. Now, after that, we'll discuss health issues related to the digestive system and eating habits, and the effects of modifying digestive organs on human health, also issues related to defecation and health issues related to eating habits. So in this video, we'll be discussing mainly the definition of a balanced diet, and we'll also revise some of the functions of the different classes of food, right? And then we'll discuss the experiment on energy value. So let's discuss subtopic 9.6, a balanced diet. And we also discuss energy value in this part. Now, what is a balanced diet? A balanced diet refers to a diet that consists of all 7 food classes, namely carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, vitamins, minerals, salts, fiber, and water, in the correct proportions and in a balanced quantity. That means the quantity of each food class must be suitable according to the individual needs so that optimal health can be maintained. Right? So each individual has a different need for these food classes. For example, a teenager will need more proteins to build new cells, new tissues as he is growing, continuing to grow. Whereas an adult that has stopped growing may need less proteins and also less carbohydrates if they are not as active as the teenager. Right. So the importance of a balanced diet is to supply enough energy for daily activities Okay, so balanced diet doesn't only supply the classes of food to prevent diseases, but it's also to supply energy for daily activities such as moving around, walking, playing sports, working, or studying. To ensure healthy growth and development in children, right? So children need a balanced diet in order to grow healthily and to develop at a normal and healthy pace. To maintain optimal health for the body to function effectively and to prevent infections, deficiency diseases like scurvy or rickets caused by lack of vitamins, all right, and chronic diseases. Right, so let's have a look at this plate of food, all right? It is a meal. Now, can you identify the 7 classes of food here that are provided by all these types of food here? For example, this portion here can represent rice or other grains, right? So this is which class of food? Yes, they belong to the class of food called carbohydrates. Okay, C for carbohydrates. How about this piece of food here? Now you have to recognize what it is first of all, right? So this is the fish called salmon. All right, it is a piece of salmon. So what is the main food class provided by this fish? Yes, proteins, right? And then next, in the fish also, we have something else that's very important for health. Which food class is that? Lipids, right? And also, how about vitamins and mineral salts? Where are they found? Yes, in the vegetables, we have vitamins and also mineral salts, like calcium is found in broccoli, right? And then we have fiber, which is also provided by the vegetables here. Okay, tomatoes, of course, provide vitamins like vitamin C. All right, and also we need a glass of water to complete the diet. Okay. Now, in chapter 4 of this syllabus, we have really discussed the functions of these food classes: carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, right? So let's revise through it, as the functions are important when you're writing essay answers. For example, when you're asked to state or suggest some of the food that can be eaten by a person who has special needs, certain needs, then you have to justify your choice of food. So you have to state the function of that food class, right? So this is quite important. So for the food class of carbohydrates, they serve as a source of energy. For example, glucose is oxidized through cellular respiration to produce energy for cellular activities and also for the activities of the individual. Then glycogen is an energy reserve which is used to store energy. So it can be converted back to glucose to be used to produce energy when it is needed, when glucose is needed. Now, healthy sources of carbohydrates are brown rice, wholemeal bread, then cereals, pasta, and potatoes, which are steamed and mashed, or which are stewed, not the deep fried potatoes, not deep fried potato chips. Okay, so we have to be able to give some healthy sources for each food class. All right, so brown rice and wholemeal bread are healthy sources because they have fiber in them and they are not processed so much like white rice or white bread. Okay, so brown rice and wholemeal bread are suitable sources, healthy sources of carbohydrates. For proteins, they are basically used to build new cells for growth and for repair of damaged tissues. And proteins are also used in cells to synthesize enzymes, hormones, and antibodies, which all have special functions in the body. Now, healthy sources of proteins are fish, lean chicken without the fat, eggs, beans, pulses like peas, nuts, and then milk, cheese, and yogurt, and so forth. Now, for lipids, they can provide energy. If there's not enough carbohydrates in the body, then lipids can be used to provide energy. Also, they are used as energy reserves. For example, excess lipids can be stored as adipose tissue under the skin. Okay, can be stored in the adipose tissue under the skin. So the adipose tissue can also be used to insulate the body against the cold. And lipids act as a solvent for fat-soluble or lipid-soluble vitamins, which are vitamins A, D, E, and K. So we need to eat some lipids in our diet to dissolve these vitamins so that they can be easily absorbed into the body. All right. So we eat the food like vegetables which contain these vitamins, but we do not eat the lipids. The vitamins A, D, E, K cannot be absorbed into the body. Now, healthy sources of lipids are olive oil and other types of vegetable oils. So please do not suggest butter or animal fat as sources of food for a diet. Now, fiber. Fiber stimulates peristalsis in the intestines to keep the food or waste moving through the intestines so that the feces can be defecated. So it helps to prevent constipation, which is difficulty in passing out the feces, right? And in Malay we call this sembilit. So eating fiber will help to prevent constipation because the undigested cellulose will be passed out. Okay, so fruits and vegetables have a lot of cellulose which cannot be digested by the body, and this will form the fiber that will be defecated, but it's needed to help stimulate peristalsis. Okay, now water. Water is the medium for biochemical reactions in cells, so we need to drink water so that the enzymatic reactions in cells can be carried out. And it's the medium of transport of nutrients and also oxygen. So this is carried out by the blood. The transport of nutrients and oxygen is carried out by the blood, and the blood plasma contains a lot of water, a high percentage of water. Alright, then water helps to regulate body temperature because the water in the sweat evaporates to cool down the body. So sources of water are fruit juice, plain water, milk, or boiled barley drink. So these are some sources of water that we can recommend for a balanced diet. So here we see a lot of vegetables, and also fruits like lemon. So all these are sources of fiber. Okay, and also they are sources of vitamins and minerals. Let's talk about daily energy requirement. So a balanced diet should also be able to fulfill the daily energy requirement of a person. So we need energy from food to carry out our physical activities like moving around, doing work, playing sports, and so forth. And also to sustain vital functions of the body, such as the heartbeat, breathing, and maintenance of body temperature at 37 degrees Celsius. So this energy needed by the body is obtained from the oxidation of food molecules in cellular respiration when the food molecules are broken down. That is especially glucose. Okay, it combines with oxygen and then it is broken down to form carbon dioxide and water. According to the equation GOET, glucose plus oxygen produces water, energy, and carbon dioxide. Now, the three main energy providing molecules are carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. So although these three main food classes provide energy, okay, these are the pure forms of the food class, so they provide energy. However, the amount of energy provided in kilojoules per gram of the food is not the same. Fats produce more energy, right, when they are oxidized, 37 kilojoules per gram. And for proteins and for carbohydrates, this is the next food class that produces the second highest value of energy value, 17.6. And protein is quite near compared to carbohydrates, quite like carbohydrates, 17.2 kilojoules per gram of pure protein. But basically in the body, first, the body will choose to use carbohydrates. It'll break down carbohydrates to produce energy. So if there's a lack of carbohydrates, then lipids will be used. And finally, if there's a lack of lipids too, proteins will be used to provide the energy for daily activities and to sustain the vital functions. So this can occur if a person is starving or goes on a diet. So the energy content of a type of food can be determined by burning a known mass of the food in the presence of oxygen in an apparatus called the bomb calorimeter. Okay, just like in the body, food can be oxidized or broken down to provide energy. So we can sort of imitate that breakdown of food by burning it using fire. Of course, this type of burning will release energy even faster than the oxidation of food in the cells, all right? But you also release energy, just like in oxidation of food. So we can find out the energy content of a type of food by burning it in the presence of oxygen, so that there's complete combustion of the food, right? So combustion of the food sample will cause the stored energy of the food to be released as heat, and we use that to raise the temperature of water in the bomb calorimeter. And then by using a formula mc theta per fm times 1000, we can calculate the energy released per gram of food, right? So m stands for mass of water and fm stands for the mass of the food. We will discuss this formula afterwards. And theta here is the difference in the temperature, difference between the final temperature and the initial temperature. Now C is the specific heat capacity. So the energy value is actually the total amount of heat energy released when 1 gram of each food is oxidized or burnt completely. So here is a diagram that shows you the experiment that will be carried out to determine the energy value of food. Okay, so this is done in the lab, and this is actually quite a simple experiment, and usually in the research lab they will use a more sophisticated apparatus called the bomb calorimeter. So let's find out more about the bomb calorimeter. Now this diagram shows us the bomb calorimeter, which is used to determine the heat of combustion of the burning of a particular food. All right, and from there the energy value is calculated. That means the amount of energy released per gram for 1 gram of the food. Okay, right, so now let's have a look at the calorimeter. First, the food is placed in a sample cup, and then this cup is placed inside a container which is immersed in water. So this is called the bomb, and it is sealed up. Now there are wires inside, buried in the food, so that when the ignition box is turned on, when the ignition is turned on, the food will be ignited electrically as the current passes through it. And then to ensure that there is complete combustion of the food, oxygen is added into the container, okay, so that the food will be burnt completely to release the maximum amount of heat energy into the water that surrounds the bomb. So as the heat is absorbed by the water, there's a stirrer to stir the water to distribute the heat evenly in the water. So the thermometer will show a temperature rise. Thus, the initial and final temperature must be measured. Okay, initial temperature is the initial temperature of water before burning the food, and the final temperature must be the highest temperature that is recorded when the food is burning and at the end of the combustion of the food. Right. So from there, calculations are done to find out the energy value of the food. So in the lab or in our school lab, we have a simplified version of the bomb calorimeter, very simplified, where we burn the sample of food to heat up 20 ml of distilled water in a boiling tube, and then we must record the initial and final temperature of the water, okay? And then we must know the mass of the food too, and the volume of the water in order to calculate the energy value. So let's go on to study more about the energy value of food, how to measure the energy value of food in the laboratory. Now, so the energy value of a food is defined as the total amount of energy released when 1 gram of food is oxidized or burnt completely. So the energy value in food is measured in the form of heat energy that's released when the food is burnt, and the unit is kilojoules per gram or kJ per gram per G. Okay. Now another unit of heat energy is a calorie. This is the O unit, and 1 calorie is equivalent to 4.2 joules, and this is the quantity of heat energy needed to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius at a pressure of 1 standard atmosphere. So this 4.2 joules is actually called the specific heat capacity of water. Specific heat capacity of water. Alright, as you may have studied in physics or chemistry. Now, so the energy value of food is equivalent to the water mass in grams times 4.2 joules per gram per degree Celsius times the increase in the water temperature, and this is divided by the mass of the food sample and also divided by 1000 to convert it from joules to kilojoules. Now the short form of this formula is WM, stands for water mass, times C, which is the specific heat capacity of water, and this is 4.2. Alright, the value is 4.2, times the increase in water temperature. This is the final temperature minus the initial temperature. Okay, then divided by FM is the food mass divided by 1000. Okay, and the whole thing is divided by 1000 to convert it to kilojoules, from joules to kilojoules. Now take note that the mass of the water, okay, is the value on top, and the mass of food is the value at the bottom, not vice versa. Experiment to determine the energy value of different food samples. Activity 9.4, studying the energy value or determining the energy value of different food samples. So this experiment is important for the practical exam, SPM practical exam, as so far this year it has not been tested yet, okay, in this year 2022. And it is an experiment that can be done in the laboratory in a short period of time, okay. So you need to memorize this experiment, especially the procedure too, and the variables and materials and so forth, including precautions, because sometimes the experiment given in the exam may be non-guided, meaning there's no procedure given. You're just given the apparatus and then you have to figure out yourself how to do the experiment. So you need to know the procedures from the textbook, okay? And then find out how to handle the MV, RV, and CV, and then memorize the precautions, okay? But if you are lucky, if you're fortunate, some experiments are guided. Alright, so it depends on the question. Now, the problem statement. What's in the problem statement? The MV and RV and the question. Okay, and there must be a question mark. So a problem statement is a question. Now, which food sample has the highest energy value? Because if you look at our objective here, we can determine the MV and RV already, right? Energy value is your RV, and the different food samples is your MV. Okay, so in your problem statement, you must have this MV and RV. Now you must have the word energy value and you must have the word food sample. So just turn the objective into a question instead. Okay, so studying the energy value of different food samples, your problem statement will be which food sample, which MV has the highest RV. Okay, which food sample has the highest energy value. Now let's say you are given groundnuts and cashew nuts to compare. So you must have a hypothesis where you have the RV, MV, and the correct relationship. So here our hypothesis is groundnuts have a higher energy value compared to cashew nuts, or a groundnut has a higher energy value compared to a cashew nut. Okay, that is based on per gram of the food. All right, so groundnuts and cashew nuts are your MV. Okay, and then you have energy value, which is your RV, and the relationship is groundnuts have a higher energy value. Okay, that's the correct relationship. So you have three parts to in your hypothesis: MV, RV, and correct relationship. Next, variables. The manipulated variable are the types of food samples, as you can find that from the objective. Okay, the different food samples. Then the responding variable, looking at the objective again, the responding variable is the energy value of the food sample. Now this is called the main responding variable. You also have a sub-responding variable, the one that you measure in the lab, which is the increase in temperature. All right, so increase in temperature is also a responding variable. Now the fixed variable is the water mass and also the distance between the food sample and the boiling tube. So you must put the food sample as close to the boiling tube as possible. So that when the food sample is burning, the heat energy released, more heat energy released will be used to heat up the temperature to raise the temperature of water. Okay, and that less heat energy will be lost to the surroundings. Now, materials. Distilled water, food samples, that is cashew nuts and groundnuts, cotton wool and plasticine, apparatus, retort stand with clamp, thermometer, boiling tube, long needle, electronic weighing scale, barrier, measuring cylinder, and Bunsen burner. Now, first of all is the weighing of the food sample before we burn the food sample. So remember to weigh the food sample first. Take a small piece of each food sample, weigh and record the mass of each food sample using the electronic weighing balance. Please take note that for nuts, we usually use around 0.5 grams to 1.0 grams. Okay, we usually take that weight of the nut to be burnt, because if you were to take a bigger mass of the nuts, sometimes it will cause the water to boil. If the water in the boiling tube boils, the experiment will not be accurate because the water will boil at 100 degrees Celsius and there's no more increase in temperature, although the heat is being released from the burning food. Okay, so we must not allow the water to boil for this experiment. Okay, so the mass that is used is not that much, it's around 0.5 grams to 1 gram for each nut. This is for nuts. For other food samples, it may be different. Here's a very good animation for the procedure of this experiment. First, you weigh and record the mass of the food sample. Okay, starting from number 1 here. Weigh and record the mass of the food sample using an electronic weighing scale. Next, get a boiling tube and measure 20 ml of water, pour it into the boiling tube. All right, so you measure the 20 ml of water using a measuring cylinder. Next, attach the boiling tube to a retort stand. Then insert the thermometer into the water and use some cotton wool to hold the thermometer in place. Next, we must remember to measure and record the initial temperature of the water, right, in a table. Right, then we prepare the food sample by pricking with a long needle so that the needle will hold it up in place. Okay, and then add some plasticine at the base here so that the needle will be able to stand upright. Okay, and make sure that the food sample, like the nuts, are quite close to the base of the boiling tube to prevent or to reduce heat loss to the environment. Okay, so that more heat is used to heat up the water. Okay, so next is to put the nut in a Bunsen burner flame to get it ignited so that it starts burning, and then quickly put it under the boiling tube. Now, before you start burning, remember to put a windshield around the apparatus. So burn the food sample and use the thermometer to gently stir the water, very slowly. Please do not let the thermometer clash with the walls of the boiling tube, because this can break the bulb inside. Alright, so gently stir the water without the cling cling sound. If I hear the cling cling sound, I know that students have not used the thermometer correctly to stir the water, and this can break the thermometer. Now, as the food is burning, pay attention to the temperature shown on the thermometer and record the final highest temperature. Also, make sure that the food burns completely. If the flame goes out before the food is completely burnt, you have to again ignite it using the Bunsen burner and then put the food under the boiling tube again to heat up the water until all the food is burnt up. After that, with all these values like the mass of food sample, initial temperature, and the final highest temperature, we can calculate the energy value of the nut or the food sample. So here is the procedure, the steps for the experiment, right? Let me go through very quickly and let's identify the various variables and precautions. First, weigh a cashew nut using an electronic weighing scale and record its mass. Then measure 20 ml of distilled water using a measuring cylinder and pour it into a boiling tube. So this is your CV. Clamp the boiling tube to the retort stand and put in the thermometer. Fix the position of the thermometer using cotton wool. Alright. So you have fixed the position of the thermometer. Next, record the initial temperature of the distilled water. Right, so measure the temperature of the water. Then stick the cashew nut on the needle and hold the needle upright using some plasticine. Now, next, before you start burning the food, place a barrier such as a windshield around the apparatus setup to prevent wind from blowing on the burning food sample, right, and to prevent the heat from escaping from the burning food sample. So you want all the heat, most of the heat, to heat up the water. Next, light the cashew nut using a Bunsen burner and place it below the boiling tube. So place the cashew nut that's burning below the boiling tube, as close to the boiling tube base as possible. So another precaution is we must stir the water in the boiling tube slowly and gently to distribute the heat evenly, and then record the highest temperature shown on the thermometer after the cashew nut has completely burnt. Right, this is your responding variable. Next, replace the water in the boiling tube and then repeat the steps 1 to 9 using groundnut. So this is your other MV, right? Other than cashew nut, you can use groundnut. Then next, calculate the energy value of each food sample using the formula below. So the energy value represents your main RV that is in your hypothesis and in your problem statement. Okay, but the sub RV is that means the RV that you are measuring in the experiment is actually the difference in temperature or the rise in temperature for the food sample. So record your results in the table below as shown here. And your formula is energy value of food in kilojoules per gram equals to water mass in grams times 4.2 joules per gram per degree Celsius times increase in temperature, water temperature in degrees Celsius, divided by the food sample mass in grams and divided by 1000, so that you convert it from joules to kilojoules. Or the short form would be Wmc theta per Fm times 1000. Wm is your water mass and Fm is your food mass. Here are some sample results. So for cashew nut, the mass of the food sample was 0.60. Initial temperature of water was 30 degrees Celsius. Final temperature of water 65 degrees Celsius. So the increase in temperature is 65 minus 30, we get 35. Now the energy value of cashew nut equals to the mass of water, which is 20 grams, because 1 ml of water is equivalent to 1 gram. The weight is 1 gram. So 20 ml water, 20 grams. So 20 times the specific heat capacity of water, the C is 4.2, it's a constant, times the temperature rise. Theta is the temperature rise, and this is 35 degrees Celsius. Divided by the mass of food sample, which is 0.60, and divided by 1000 to convert the joules to the unit joules to kilojoules. So our answer is 4.90. For groundnut, the mass is 0.58, initial temperature 30, final temperature 73, increase in temperature is 43. So our energy value is 20 times 4.2 times the increase in temperature, which is 43, divided by the mass of the groundnut, which is 0.58, divided by 1000. Our answer is 6.23. So here we find that the groundnut has a higher energy value than the cashew nut. Now, some students may get the opposite result, okay, where the cashew nut has a higher energy value than groundnut. So which is the true situation? So referring to some research that's been done, it's been found that groundnut has a slightly higher energy value compared to cashew nut, slightly higher. But when we're doing the experiment, the condition of the nut also is important, also affects the energy value. For example, nuts that have been roasted will have less water in them. All right, so they're more compact, and they may produce a higher energy value, okay, for the same mass. We are not sure about that, all right, about the other factors that may come into play, right, to affect the energy value, all right. So these are just sample results. So now let's continue with the calculations. Here's a comparison between groundnut or peanut and cashew nut based on this source, Wikipedia. Now the nutritional value per 100 grams of the nut. For peanuts of the Valencia variety in raw condition, energy from 100 grams of the nut is 2,385 kilojoules or 570 kilocalories. But for cashew nut, which is raw, the energy released is 2,310 kilojoules or 553 kilocalories. So here we compare the energy in kilojoules. We can see that peanut has a slightly higher energy value compared to cashew nut, okay, as you can see from here. Now, when we compare the carbohydrate content, cashew nut has more carbohydrates than peanut, right? But the fat content of the peanut is more than the cashew nut, right? So for every 100 grams of the nut, there is 48 grams of fat. But for cashew nut, there's only 43.9 grams of the fat. Okay, so peanut has more fat than cashew nut per gram or per 100 grams. Now, proteins also, for proteins, peanuts have a higher amount of protein, okay, a larger amount of protein, which is 25 grams, and this one for cashew nut is only 18.2 grams. So based on the table above, peanut has a slightly higher energy value compared to cashew nut. And the reason is because peanut has a higher fat and protein content compared to cashew nut, especially a higher fat content. Because fats give out a lot of energy, release a lot of energy when they are oxidized or burnt. But here's a note. If the nuts have undergone processing methods such as drying, roasting, baking, sometimes they put a bit of oil on the nut. So, okay, so the energy values may be different, and so this may cause the difference in readings, okay, for the energy values that are obtained during the experiment. Now, discussion. Which food sample shows the higher energy value? Groundnut shows the higher energy value, okay, compared to cashew nut. State 2 precautionary steps for this experiment. So this is important also for paper 3 question. Now, the first one is, as the food is burning, stir the water in the boiling tube slowly and gently with a thermometer. And the reason is because we want to distribute the heat evenly in the water so that we have the correct temperature rise. Okay, we can record the temperature more accurately when the food is burning. Make sure the food sample is completely burnt to allow all the energy to be released from the food. Okay, so if the fire on the food sample were to be extinguished because of wind, and then there's still some food sample left, we have to continue to burn it in the first in the Bunsen burner to get the flame, and then after that put it under the boiling tube, okay, to continue to burn the food so that it will cause a rise in temperature. Now, set up a barrier of windshield around the burning food to reduce the heat loss to surroundings and get more accurate readings. Okay. Now, next, will the energy value of the food sample obtained from this experiment be lower or higher than their theoretical energy values? It will be lower. The reason is because our experiment is a rather simple experiment, so it doesn't prevent heat from escaping entirely. It doesn't prevent all the heat from escaping. So some heat is lost to the environment due to lack of insulation. Okay, so compared to the using the bomb calorimeter. Okay, so if we do this experiment in the lab, as what we discussed just now, a lot of heat, more heat is lost to the environment because we didn't use any form of insulation except to put a windshield around the apparatus. Thus, the rise in temperature of water when the food is burnt is less than should be. All right, and then this will cause lower energy value to be obtained through calculation. So our conclusion is that the hypothesis is accepted. Groundnut has a higher energy value compared to cashew nut. Now here is an objective question on energy value. And this type of question can be asked in paper 1. So the table below shows the results of an experiment to determine the energy value of a food sample X. Mass of food sample X is 0.7 grams. Mass of water in grams is 20 grams. And initial temperature of water is 29 degrees Celsius. Final temperature of water is 48 degrees Celsius. So calculate the energy value of the food sample X, and the specific heat capacity of water is 4.2 joules per gram per degree Celsius. So you can pause the video for a moment and try to calculate the energy value. Right, now let's look at the answer. So we use the formula given for energy value, which is W mc theta over Fm times 1000. Okay, or Wmc theta divided by Fm and also divided by 1000. So our Wm stands for water mass of water, which is 20 grams as stated here. Now in case they don't give the mass of water but they state the volume of water, let's say it's 20 ml, it will still be the the mass of water will have the same number or value as the volume. Okay, so 20 ml of water has the mass of 20 grams, right? So 20 times C is 4.2, the specific heat capacity of water, right? Times theta is our difference in temperature, so 48 minus 29. Okay, and then divided by the food mass, Fm is food mass, 0.7, and also divided by 1000. The answer is 2.28 kilojoules per gram. Okay, so the answer is B. Right, so that's all for this lesson. Thanks for viewing, and do check out my other video on energy value, techniques of answering biology paper 3 experiment 9.4 on energy value. So here in this video, there is a sample question for paper 3 practical test related to energy value. All right, so that's all, and till we meet again, goodbye for now.